Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to the blockbuster new release wall of our memory, grab a copy off the shelf, pop it in the old VCR, and see what time has done to it. I'm Justin. That spooky guy is Mike.
Ooh, hi Steve.
And we're here to help you navigate all the landmines littered down memory lane. So this is going to be a fun one this week, Mike. We decided to try a listener's poll. And some of our faithful kind of voted on what kind of show they wanted us to cover for our Halloween episode, Mike, or our obligatory Halloween episode. And the votes are in, Mike, and we're going to review The People Have Spoken, and we're going to review Poltergeist this week.
Quick question. I never asked you what finished second.
Evil Dead 2 was in the running for a while. I think it beat out Lost Boys by about 6 votes.
Wow, cool.
So,
okay, all good. Good
we're
taste.
going to do that again.
Good taste.
Yeah. Well, it's still under review, but look who they're listening to, but whatever. So we're like everybody else in the world. We're going to celebrate Halloween with an obligatory spooky episode. Mike really politicked hard for the word spooktacular. But I had to stop him because I know that's one of his favorite words, right, Mike?
That or a bonanza.
A boo. Ooh, that one hurts a little, but I like it. Halloween's always interesting, especially here in the States, Mike. When we were kids, the Generation X kids, we were kind of a feral generation, right? So we got to watch movies like this on cable without a whole lot of parental supervision. And I remember Halloween's being really kind of free and loose. I mean, I remember just kind of getting in a non-reflective, unsafe costume. It wasn't as regimented as it seems to be today.
No, everybody had either their favorite pillowcase or favorite garbage bag to take with them.
Yeah, it was. But what I think is interesting, sociologically at least, is that I think our generation really carried Halloween into like a new demographic. Like a lot of our generation stick with Halloween. Like by all accounts, our generation shouldn't really care much about Halloween. But when you see how this holiday is kind of morphed into something more for adults anymore, it's usually people around our age group. I remember when Halloween used to be for like, kids under 12, really. When you got to your teens, you really didn't have that.
But stop the nonsense. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but what I notice now, it's like, Halloween is for, kids under 6 and adults over 30. I don't. And the latter group seems way more obnoxious about it. So Halloween is coming up, and we've been watching quite a few some of the newer horror films, but we thought we want to go with our theme of the show is to be nostalgic, and you can't get way much more nostalgic than Poltergeist, or the German translation, which we talked about earlier, Mike, Rumble Ghost, which I think is just fantastic.
Poltergeist.
Way cooler.
Yes.
Way cooler title. But this was, so without any further ado, let's kind of get right to it. So this was released on June 4th, 1982, kind of a non-seasonal thing. It was directed by Tobe Hooper, who, Mike, I think you might remember from...
Chainsaws, man. Chainsaws.
From such subtle other classics as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Eaten Alive, and Salem's Lot, which I think we'll probably end up talking about later as the show goes. It was written by Steven Spielberg, one of the few screenplays that actually has his name as a writer credit. This came as a result. He was trying to make a sequel to Close Encounters and could never do it, so he decided to write this kind of horror film. A lot's been made about who actually directed this movie. A lot of speculation that Spielberg had such a role in it. He actually offered the movie E.T. To Tobe Hooper, who turned it down. There's a lot of E.T. parallels, Mike. We'll kind of get into those as we go. Tobe Hooper said no. He said, well, how about doing something more in your line? And he had this, so Tobe Hooper took on the role of this film. It was written by a couple, basically TV show writers, Michael Grace and Mark Victor. Those two are responsible for giving us hundreds of shows of the Starsky and Hutch, Beretta, and Kojak variety, Mike. They wrote a lot of those episodes.
They love the detectives, don't they?
Yeah, they actually tried to get Stephen King to pen the screenplay for this, but he said thank you, no. But it had a a $10 million budget, and it was released into a relatively soft summer in 1982. Like, there's some interesting releases here. A week before Poltergeist came out, we were watching Rocky 3, which, another HBO staple.
Living in America, man. Wow.
Yeah, Poltergeist came out the same. Poltergeist came out the same week as Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
Oh, one of my favorites.
And then, yeah, great movie. And then after that, E.T. and Grease 2 came out like the week after. So Spielberg had a couple films in.
Grease 2.
Yeah,
I forgot that Grease 2 came out the same summer as Star Trek 2. Oh, that's
yeah,
incredible.
And then just a short couple days after that, you had Blade Runner and The Thing. So things started to pick up. It was kind of a scary, scary summer. But yeah, that was kind of the landscape back in 1982. Mike, you kind of want to walk us through the cast?
This will be a very short stroll. I'm not going to bore you with every character in here like I usually do. I'm going to just let's go over our principles. We have Craig T. Nelson. It's hard to imagine this guy other than a football coach, of course.
Yeah.
I think of All the Right Moves and that silly show Coach that was on ABC for God knows how many years. But prototypical coach. It makes a good, I guess, dad in this movie.
Yeah, he was kind of like everybody's '80s dad.
Yeah, he makes he does fit that role well. And he's paired up with Joe Beth Williams in this one, who seemed like all the movies I can remember with her in it were in like a 3 or 4 year period. I loved her in The Big Chill. She was my favorite roles in there. It's like a straight-laced wife who kind of cuts loose, And then the day after, it was a depressing TV movie about nuclear war that she was in. And other than that, I had trouble remembering her in any other movies. I know she's been in a few TV shows since, here and there, but where did she go after that? And of course, we can't talk about Poltergeist without talking about like the curse of the kids in this one.
Oh yeah,
poor Heather O'Rourke, who died tragically very young, and the other girl, the older sister in this movie, who was I think Dominic Dunn's daughter. He ended up on a whole crusade after she was murdered, and produced all these TV shows about murders and everything. And that's kind of the I don't know how much the whole thing about the curse. I don't know if you'll get into it later, but I don't really believe in that stuff. But it's interesting.
I kind of wanted to pass on that because a lot of people have kind of beat that one to death. There's a lot of true crime podcasts that kind of cover the curse, if you will. But just what's interesting about that with Dominique Dunn in particular is the gross miscarriage of justice. I mean, this guy is free. He's walking around today. It's
incredible.
Unbelievable.
I was going to say, other than that, you have a lot of people in this movie that were like your Steven Spielberg kind of guy, characters that, you're like, hey, I know that guy from that. I know that guy from that. You have the, what I call the two guys. They're kind of like the investigators, the Rockwell and Stephen Bishop looking character.
Yep.
If you will.
Rockwell.
If both of y'all get that reference, then, that's a good one. And then you have like Zelda Rubinstein, of course, makes the movie, but like, what else would you know her from, than this movie? And my cameo cast member of this one is James Karen, who makes a return appearance in our podcast collection because he was also in Congo. He was a university president in that one, if you can remember. And he appears. He has the most memorable face in this Poltergeist movie for like that look of horror at the very end. He's like, "Oh, what's going on?" But he's the sleazy kind of real estate boss of Craig T. Nelson in this movie, and he's kind of he gets his like comeuppance at the end. But anyway, other than the dog, what else can I really say about the cast in this? There's a lot of like random people.
Just a collection of like character actors,
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So just a few notes on that cast, Mike. Thank you. I think the studio had kind of farmed out these roles to like bigger names. Like I think Shirley MacLaine was in the running to play Diane, the role played by Joe Beth, but she left to do Terms of Endearment. They didn't really capture her. they thought, maybe it would make more sense, and I think ultimately they were right to kind of cast lesser known, unknown stars, because then you would the premise of the story here is about how they're just an everyday family, right? And it might be hard to do that with like Warren Beatty,
Yeah.
or Shirley MacLaine in the role. So it's just about you want to see how it affects the average Joes, and I think it was very very effective there.
And
Drew
and a note
Barrymore
on,
auditioned.
I was going to say, and kind of go off the Drew Barrymore. The Spielberg always has good kid actors in his movies, no matter who they are. They're always very committed and not your average kid, for the lack of a better phrase. I mean, he always seems to be able to find these diamonds in the rough as far as kids that can actually emote and have some emotion and tug at you.
Yeah, I think casting is a unique art, and I think there's a lot of movie studios that kind of take it for granted. But as we mentioned, he seems to like really nail talent, and because he's got these childlike wonder themes in his movies, he has to go, find the younger actors, and he's usually right. He's usually really good. He very rarely misses the mark on that. As we saw, Drew Barrymore was auditioned for this role, but she was picked to do E.T. instead, and I think the rest is history from there, Mike. But there's tons of E.T. stuff, and the Poltergeist might have been called the evil E.T. because they were shot concurrently, and they were used by basically the same people. They were shot next door to each other, basically, or Steven Spielberg was basically doing them concurrently. But we'll get to a little bit more of that as the podcast progresses. The house that the location that they filmed at, that's still there in Simi Valley, Mike. It's still there, which I thought we got to go there and check that out. Yeah. As I mentioned, Spielberg worked these back to back. He did Poltergeist and then took 1 week off and then finished up E.T. But they're basically running at the same time. This originally had an R rating, Mike, and I think a few shows back we talked about Raiders of the Lost Ark, about how some of these theaters chains were getting a lot of pressure for letting kids see content of this nature. But this was again another before the PG-13 was, so they had to trim it down a little bit to get a PG rating. We wouldn't get a PG-13 rating until 1983, so the next year we actually did get that. But they had to go from R to PG.
As we're watching it, I'm thinking this is PG-13 easily, and I was thinking, well, wait a second, this is pre that, so couldn't give it an R because kids couldn't have been able to see it back then,
Yeah. So, but makes matters worse, in overseas in Britain, this was X rated. Like, originally got an X rating.
Wow.
What's all this then?
What was it? Was it just the scare factor, or there was no nudity. There's only like 3 cuss words in the whole movie. It's kind of weird.
Yeah. Oddly enough, Mike, there's no deaths in this horror film.
Yeah.
Save for the bird Tweety. The Tweety doesn't make it.
Rip Tweety.
But how many horror films do you talk about that there was no people died? But this is a long time ago, Mike. This was 1982, and I think we might have been in our early pre-teens at the time. A lot of fun stuff happened in '82 that we've all forgotten about, or younger generations never knew what happened. This was the summer that remember Larry Walters, the lawn chair guy,
balloon guy, yeah.
Yeah. This genius put 15 weather balloons on a lawn chair and sailed over Los Angeles, over the airport, got in some serious trouble. He also forgot to bring his glasses, and also forgot to bring the BB gun that he planned on to start his ascent. He was going to shoot the balloons and,
nice.
and peacefully descend. But yeah, that's where we were in '82. Interesting pop culture. I thought it was a legend, but it's actually a true story. A guy named Chuck Ross retyped the screenplay to the movie Casablanca, and he retitled it word for word, and retitled it "Everybody Comes to Rick's Party" or something like that. And he sent that manuscript to 217 studios, and they all said it sucked and it could never be made. Then I think he went on to write some sort of essay about it and some stuff. But yeah, that just again, that's where Hollywood was at the time.
And then
Clemson
became overdrawn at the memory bank, didn't it?
Yeah, my nuts. If I'm not nuts, Mike, your alma mater, Clemson, won the Orange Bowl that year. That was a big thing.
Oh yeah, it was. Danny Ford and beating Nebraska in the Orange Bowl. Wonderful.
And the never-ending sound of "Hold That Tiger" played across the country
Yeah.
to no end. Speaking of other songs playing across the country, it was the summer of "Ebony and Ivory" with Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder. Another one of my favorites, Mike, "Centerfold" by the Jay Giles Band, was out that summer.
Yes.
And the number one song, number one song in the country when this movie came out was "I Love Rock and Roll" by Joan Jett.
Awesome.
And she's still going. It's still as cool as ever. I saw her perform live at the casino in Asheville. What's it called? Cherokee Casino in Asheville. I saw her live there, and she can still kick anybody's ass. Just an amazing show. But anyway, moving on to movies.
I saw her I saw her in '82 at Carowinds.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Look at you! Wow,
that was a show, man.
We really are here on a cosmic level, Mike. This during the 1982, the MPAA, the Motion Picture Association of America, tried to outlaw VCRs, tried to get them banned, make them illegal, sensing the impending trend that was to come, I guess. The other thing I like about 1982, Mike, is the phrase "spoiler alert" was first put on print. Now it's used ad nauseum to reply to any typical things. So.
Yeah,
but that's it. So 1982, we're in the theater, Mike. We've got our $1.50 popcorn. The tickets cost 75 cents, and we're ready to go. You ready to hit it, Mike?
Yeah. I got some quarters here. Go ahead.
All right. I scare easily, so you may need to hold me. This one's a spooky one. Right. Hit the button, Mike. So the movie kind of opens up with something you don't really see all the time. I kind of forgot about the MGM lion roaring. You don't really see that anymore. I always liked that. I always thought it was cool. But we kind of open up on the television's playing at night, and it's kind of flickering, and you get that weird strobe effect, and the Star Spangled Banner is playing. To the younger generation, you may not be aware that there was a time when the TV just stopped, and there was no ShamWows, and there was no
paid program,
late night advertising. Yeah, it was there was a certain time when the TV stopped playing, and that meant something. It meant it was time to go to bed. Yeah. But yeah, that phenomenon happened in our lifetime, believe it or not. So as the TV's playing, we get this very harsh banged Carol Ann wakes up and comes down the stairs, and I'm scared already just seeing a little girl going down the stairs with a strobe light. I mean, I was pretty scared anyway. And she seems to be kind of like locked in on the television and entranced by it. So she walks up, and you hear these weird whisperings, and her parents wake up and see her. And she's talking to the TV, and her parents wake up and see her, and they just assume that she's sleepwalking or something. You just kind of dismiss it. But there's probably more to it than that, Mike, and certainly there is. So we wake up the next morning. It's a Sunday afternoon, and it's your typical 80s Sunday. They're watching the football game.
Saints
They're
and
actually
Rams.
watching the game in slow motion.
Archie Manning, quarterback. That takes you back.
Yeah. And as the opening credits are rolling, we see the guy on the bike who's obviously was sent to go get beer, and he's probably the guy with the DUI, obviously, Mike. So he's riding a little BMX through the what is now pretty common, but at the time was like these new kind of cookie cutter subdivisions that is kind of popping up. All the houses look the same. But it's happy and it's funny, and that's cool stuff. So they're watching TV, and we cut to Jo Beth Williams, who's kind of cleaning house while all the men are having fun. She's doing the work, and she finds that Carol Ann's little Tweety has died. Her little bird has died, and she performs a little autopsy or a little funeral for that bird, kind of foreshadowing what's coming up, right? And the annoying brother Robbie walks by, and he climbs this big dead tree that's in the middle of the yard. Again, more foreshadowing. There's planting the seeds of things that are going to get very scary here very quickly. All right, so the next night they're watching TV, and they fall asleep in front of the TV, and Caroline comes down again, and she kind of crawls up to the TV, starts having the conversation again, and then you get this one of the greatest jump scares in movie history, Mike, where the skeletal hand kind of comes out of the TV and touches her. And we see the ghost kind of like scream out of the TV and kind of jump into the wall, and then everybody kind of wakes up because the house is shaking at this point, which they're under the assumption that's like an earthquake. And then we get the classic line where they look at her in front of the TV, and she kind of looks over her shoulder and says, "They're here."
I said, "I'm out."
Yeah, that's it. Goodbye. Next. So the next morning, they're just kind of kind of dismissing what happened, and they're just kind of assuming that she's sleepwalking and that there's been an earthquake. And of course, no one in the neighborhood knows what they're talking about. And they're having breakfast, and all the kids kind of get out for school. And as Carol Ann and her mom are left, she notices all the chairs in the breakfast nook have been pushed out, and she pushes them back in, and then she runs out all in one shot. She kind of runs out of frame, runs back in, and all the chairs are stacked up on top of each other in this weird gravity defying kind of tower. And interesting thing about that, Mike, that was all done in real. That was like one shot.
Yeah, it looked like
where
it was.
Yeah, where the cast and crew or the crew members kind of came in very quickly and assembled this thing, and then came back in as the camera pans back. But that kind of freaks out Joe Beth, and she turns to little Carol Ann and says, "Was that the TV people?" And then she goes, "Yeah." Okay, so strike two. I'm ready. The next that night, Stephen comes home from his work as a real estate agent, and he sees Joe Beth like screaming for him to come inside to check out this phenomenon. And she shows him that all the poltergeist kind of antics up to this point, Mike, are just kind of like pranks, good natured ribbing. And so
things escalate quickly in Cuesta Verde.
So it starts innocently enough where she, as I mentioned, she pulls Steven excitedly into the kitchen, and she sees she's got like the floor marked up in crayon, where like a landing strip, where the she puts his chair down and the chair moves across the kitchen floor, and she thinks that's really cool. And then as they go to bed that night, the storm really kind of comes in, and that's where that's where everything really turns, Mike. That's when all the bad stuff goes down. He tries to calm the kids down with the storm by doing the countdown game, but in the middle of it, the storm kicks in and the lightning strikes, and a giant tree comes to life.
It was funny rewatching this. I'd forgotten like the groaning sounds the damn thing makes. Like, it was like the Ents from the Lord of the Rings. I was like, oh no, what is going on?
Yeah, but this was a fear that Spielberg had as a kid, and I think we've all had that thing where we see some weird shaped tree. But one of the cool things about this is it generally knows what scares you. You know what I mean? There's some seminal things that just scare everybody, and they really kind of capture that. And so the tree kind of comes in and grabs Robbie and tries to eat him, and then the parents run outside to try to save him. And it's kind of really a distraction, because then the closet door opens. Again, another classic kid scare. The closet door opens. And the lights come on, and poor little Carol Ann gets kind of tornadoed in there. So they go back in the house after the tornado kind of secedes. They pull Robbie out of the tree, and there's of course they're scared to death, and Carol Ann's missing. And they run around and they can't find her. And then of course they think she may have fell in the swimming pool, which is getting dug. Which was so he run. Losing your child. I mean, these are all like seminal things that scare everybody, guttural things. So he's kind of swimming around the muddy pool and can't find her, and then they hear Carol Ann screaming, and they run in the house, and poor little Robbie gets stuck in front of the television, starts hearing Carol Ann screaming through the TV. And say what you want about that kid, but his screams to his parents when he hears Carol Ann, I mean, I remember being so scared as a kid where I couldn't voice a scream, and that kid nailed it. So you got to think they probably scared these kids on purpose a little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, no kid is that good an actor. I'm sorry. So that kind of concludes the first act. Is like, your daughter's been kidnapped by ghosts, and she's on some sort of plane that you don't know where she is, but they can hear her through the TV. So that's creepy. We do a little time jump, and then we see that Craig T. Nelson. Is it Craig T. Nelson?
That's it.
We see that Craig T. Nelson goes to the university. He tries to get these parapsychologists to help him. This is before there were anything like ghost chasers or anything like that, Mike. These were like pre-Ghostbusters. They interview him and they say, "Hey, would you be willing to welcome a full-on investigation into your house?" He says, "Yes, please. I just want to get my daughter back." So yeah, creepy, right? So we get these three doctors that come and kind of hook up a bunch of equipment in their house and run a bunch of experiments, and those experiments don't go well. Like especially like the first room, they're kind of bragging about how they've captured paranormal activity before. Like this one guy's big
child's
grab
toy going
a child's
across
toy,
the floor.
Yeah. 8 minutes, and he just goes, "Yeah, here, hold my beer," and then he kind of opens up the door, and we see this room just completely possessed. Kind of like Trumpy's room, Mike.
He can do magic.
It's like Pee Wee's Playhouse in there. Everything's flying around.
Oh no, Cowboy Curtis.
Call back. Watch the last episode, man. It's really good. You guys gotta listen to it. But yeah, so they know they're in for something huge there. So that night they kind of they want to see if they can film or kind of understand what's going on, and they set up a bunch of cameras. And what I thought was interesting about this scene, Mike, in the middle of the night, the guy Marty, one of the ghost chasers,
Stephen Bishop.
he helps. Yeah, he decides he's just going to go get something to eat out of the house, right? So he goes into the kitchen. Who helps himself to a steak in a guest's house, right?
Sure.
A steak that's not in any kind of wrapping paper, and he puts it down on the counter, and the steak kind of comes to life, spewing up all kinds of gross stuff. And that I remember as a kid, that just really scaring the crap out of me. And then he spits out a chicken leg he was eating, and see there's it's littered with maggots on the floor, and he runs in to throw up in the wash basin, and then he goes extreme tanning, Mike. He looks up at his reflection in the mirror, and he sees
I think he was popping a pimple. Actually, he's just working on some skincare regimen.
Yeah, and it really got away from him there, but he starts to pull his face off. I think it's obviously the poltergeist are messing with his head. Interesting thing about that one, on the model, the special effects, the makeup, those are Stephen King's. I keep seeing this. Those are Steven Spielberg's hands pulling the skin off that guy's face.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah. And previous to that, he went upstairs to check things out, and he got a big bite. He's got big teeth marks. So Marty's not enjoying the trip. But their observations kind of end that night when they see the spirits coming out of Carol Ann's bedroom and going through the house, and they got captured on camera. You can see all these souls coming out. Yeah. It's kind of introduced that this is gonna. Yeah,
it's best to me. Is the best scene in the movie. I remember as a kid thinking, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool!" The way they had like the outlines, just the shadowy figures of ghosts coming down the stairs and kind of looking around.
It was scary and kind of enlightening at the same time. And the ethereal soundtrack really kind of sells it too. Right. It's really end result is that they realize they're in over their head and they need more help. So they tell them we're going to come back, but we're going to bring help. But Marty decides to sit the next night out for obvious reasons, right? So the next night they bring back the big guns, Mike.
Yes.
And we get introduced to Tangina Barons, Mike, psychic extraordinaire. Yeah. And she's about 3 foot tall. Yeah, she's about 3 foot tall. And she's got a great accent. And
now, I probably at the time when I was watching this as a kid, I'm watching this thinking, oh my gosh, this woman's really creepy. But now I'm watching it thinking, she sounds like Bobby Hill, and I can't stop from laughing.
Well, thank you. Now, I'm never going to unhear that now. Thank you very much.
Next time you watch Poltergeist, picture Bobby Hill. You got it.
So she's met with some skepticism, but by the Freelings, but she does a little trick where she pretends not to hear Stephen's veiled attempt to answer her psychically. And then we find out that she really does hear him. So, she's got something going on. So she pulls after she makes her assessment, she pulls everybody together and talks about the game plan. What they're going to try to do is they're going to actually, it seems insanely practical for such a, paranormal thing. But the goal is they want to tie a rope around someone to go into the portal, grab Carol Ann and pull her back. But there's more to the story, Mike. There's something. There's a catch. It's determined that Carol Ann was kind of taken because of her life force, and end result is, Mike, there's something else in there with her, right? And it's not good.
It's a dark force. It disguises itself as a child.
Yeah. So you're freaking me out. Your inherent accent makes that even more creepy.
There's peace and serenity in the light.
In the light. But she explains to the family's horror that she's in there with a demon who's using her to keep people from passing from one plane of consciousness to the next. So it's not going to be good. So then we get to the kind of the final act, Mike, where Diane puts the rope around her waist and kind of goes in. Tangina performs basically kind of a soft exorcism, telling the people to go into the light. And Joe Beth goes into the portal, and Craig T. Nelson's kind of holding the rope to make sure she doesn't get taken away. And then we get this big, evil, scary demon head coming out of the closet, Mike.
That was kind of, yeah. I guess that's the bad entity, huh?
Yeah, even as a grown ass man, as they say, that still kind of gets me every now and then because you always have
Yeah,
this seminal fear of what's in the closet, and that could be in there.
that's
But
in
he
there.
freaks out, lets go of the rope, but fortunately, Diane kind of falls through the floor out of this new portal, breaks through the membrane, and kind of lands. That was a hard thump too. She's got that kid. They kind of fall 10 feet onto the floor, and they get him into the bathwater, and they kind of come back to consciousness, and they've rescued Carol Ann. So the end, right, Mike?
she had a lot of ectoplasm had to wash off first, and then the
Pretty
end.
gross. Yeah. So a lot of movies do like the fake ending motif. And this one really did it well because the first time you saw this, and it's hard to put yourself back because everybody's seen this movie 400 times, especially our generation that saw this as a early HBO staple, which they played this movie every 6 or 7 movies this was on.
Oh yeah,
Uh, but the first time you see this, you think that's got to be the end. So the kind of like the summary is they're kind of packing up and moving, and then you know uh, Steven explains that he's going to go get all his stuff from his job, and they're getting ready to move. But then you start to ask yourself, why is the movie still going? you know, well, first of all, why are they there at all, right? But second of all,
yeah.
why are they? Why hasn't the movie ended yet? And they kind of tease you that there's something coming, and of course there is, Mike.
And I
Uh,
gotta why didn't they pack that damn clown? Why?
we'll get to that in a minute.
Jesus.
Yeah, everybody's reunited, and Joe Best's like taking a bath to kind of wash the newly found gray out of her hair. I don't understand that phenomenon in movies that your hair turns gray after after a traumatic experience.
If anybody's hair should turn gray, it would have been Craig T. Nelson's from seeing that damn demon come out of the closet. Jesus.
Yeah, seemed to be fine, but whatever. So as she's taking her bath, the kids are in the room, and Robbie sees that clown on the chair, and he's still afraid, of course. So he hasn't been traumatized enough. So he gets up and he kind of puts a jacket over it. And he goes back to bed, and then he wakes up a little bit later and sees that the jacket and the clown are gone.
Oh.
And you know, any warm-blooded individual is already freaking out now. So he does. He crawls under the bed and it lifts up the skirt and sees nothing there. And then he pops up and guess who's there, Mike? The
Insane
clown.
clown posse. Yeah, there they are.
Yeah. So the clown kind of strangles him, making sure that if you are a kid, you'll never enjoy clowns again. Uh, Funny thing about this scene, Mike. Robbie, the actor that played Robbie, Oliver Robbins, was almost killed in this scene. I think they when it kind of the arm kind of goes around and chokes him, he starts screaming, I can't breathe," and
Oh no, was that a real reaction?
yes, but all the people on the crew thought it was just him improvising. It's not funny, but it really is.
See, Spielberg really does get some good actors, doesn't he?
Yeah, he sure does.
Improv.
So, yeah, like a 10-year-old kid needs to see what's my motivation, Steve. Really. But of course, at that point, the closet opens up, and they're back, and they're even more angry, and they try to suck the kids into the new portal, and Joe Beth in a very sexy orange 65 football 90, Mike, which we'll get to that later. She runs through the house and tries to save them, and uh, it all kind of goes bad, Mike. They're back and they're angry, right? And she kind of gets stuck into the swimming pool herself, and all these skeletons kind of come up, Mike.
That's
Um,
right.
these were
Popping
actually real,
coffins.
real. Yeah, these were actually real skeletons, not fake ones, because real skeletons were cheaper to get hold of,
Oh
easier
my
to
god.
access, Mike. 'Cause Spielberg, he never really believes in spending any money on his movies.
No, not at all.
What the hell? But as it turns out, as was previously described in an earlier scene, the Steven's boss uh, in an attempt to keep Steven from leaving the company, explains that then he offers him a new house, and Steven says, "Well, I don't, it's right next to the cemetery." And the guy says, "Well, we'll just relocate the cemetery like we did back in 1976." And then, Craig T. Nelson's like, "Wait, what? You're what now?" uh, in an earlier scene, this is all kind of fleshed out, and it kind of hinted that this was built on a cemetery, but they only moved the headstones, Mike.
Yes,
they left the bodies.
Best line,
they've been
second best line
yeah.
of the movie.
So that same creepy boss kind of comes back in the middle of things kind of going south, and Steven's trying to get his family and get in the station wagon and haul ass out of there. And the boss shows up, and he he grabs him and says, "You only moved the headstones, didn't you?" And there's a couple screams. He screams, "Why, really maniacally," which is great. So they end up getting in the car and driving off. And the house just kind of collapses in on itself, and it knows right where the zoning is, Mike. You would have been great at your own job. You knew where the property lines and everything were.
That's right. Yes, it must have been a dead surveyor that was in that cemetery.
But the house kind of crumbles up, and there's this huge explosion, and the neighbors kind of get blown back, and the family's screaming, and they just kind of run off, and they make their way to the Holiday Inn as a respite there, Mike, and the old Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
And they're beaten and wet and soaked and look like they've been through hell, and they're just kind of staggered into the room, and the camera kind of fixes on them going into the room and closing the door, and then lingers there for about 4 or 5 seconds, and then the door opens again, and you see the TV getting carted off and rammed into the balcony, and then the
great
door.
Ending.
It's a great ending, and then that spooky children's chorus kind of kicks in again,
and they laugh at the end. Oh, I don't know if you stayed at the very end.
But I did. I have a note for
laughing.
that. So
not good.
But so that was a horrible summary of the movie, guys. But everybody's seen this movie 100 times. We just kind of want to pick and choose some of the funnier parts that we are the most pop culture worthy parts. I think we covered them all. But just a great movie, a great horror movie. A movie I probably shouldn't have seen at 11 years old. But I mean, I know every scene of this movie forever, and I just had a great time watching it again, Mike, especially around this time of year. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm the same way. Like you say, there's so many scary themes that are presented in this movie that hit you viscerally, like the closet or the stuffed animal that can come alive, or like you say, the gnarled tree that looks like it's tapping at your window, or bodies coming out of the ground, abducted kids, thunderstorm.
Just checks all the boxes.
Constant time. I never knew it rained this much in Simi Valley or Southern California. Good Lord. And even like a dead pet, you had just so many things going on that as an 11-year-old, or hell, as an 18 or 28-year-old or whoever, you're watching this and just is hitting all these buttons, and you didn't expect it. Like you say, you start off watching it and you think, oh, nice suburban little setting. And, there'll be some weird stuff going on, maybe a la E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, kind of, but it's not going to be that scary. And then you actually watch it, like, geez. And my daughter's watching this movie for the first time a couple of nights ago, and even she was kind of spooked by it. And you got to think some of these special effects, they're kind of lame in a way from 40 years ago, but just those, like I said, those themes get to you, and just that's what kind of will still to this day will spook you.
Yeah, and I think that's what's so cool about this movie is it's based on storytelling and not cheap jump scares, even though there's a share of them. It's not dependent on heavy special effects, but it's it's the realism of it, I guess. It's just a normal family, and in Hollywood terms, it's like this could happen to me. There's nothing special about this family. I think that's. But you're right. It kind of touches on all those things that scared you as a kid, like they remember. Especially our generation scared our generation as a kid and as kids, and it just it works even to this day. It's still, I know what's going to happen. I know what's behind every turn. But when Robbie looks under the bed and he comes back up, I still get scared, and to this day. Or the scene when she's walking through the hallway with
and it gets longer.
It's off. Yeah,
Everything's off
but
kilter.
the other scene where she's got like the laundry basket, she's doing chores, and that room has been locked off, and she says, "You know what? I'm just gonna try. I'm gonna try to open the door and see." And
Oh
she opens
yeah,
the door for like a split second, and that scream and the horror
screaming.
inside that
Uh
it
huh.
just freaks her out. That scene just hits hard still.
Yep.
40 years later. So let's go just real quick on awards and accolades, Mike. This movie had a $7 million opening. And it made $77 million domestically. Again, just like last week with Tombstone, no worldwide release on this one. Um, it did spawn two terrible sequels. I guess Poltergeist 2 is a little better, uh, but like Poltergeist 3 is just utter trash.
Is that one way they have to go back in time to the Old West and they take a train and try to make it go to 88 miles an hour? Oh, that's a different. Never mind.
No, you're close.
Sorry, I get Zemeckis and Spielberg confused. That's my problem.
Right. But I think episode 3. When I first saw episode 3, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like a
Yeah.
Saturday Night Live sketch. It's really horrible. It spawned a very unnecessary and unliked remake in 2015 that Spielberg had no responsibility for or no affiliation with. I haven't seen it. On principle alone, Mike, I thought there's really no reason to remake Poltergeist, so I didn't watch it. It got nominated for several Oscars, didn't win any. It was nominated for visual effects, which it lost to E.T. It was nominated for sound effects, which it lost to E.T. It was nominated for best score, which it lost to E.T.
Oh my gosh!
Nice, right? So,
I don't know why Spielberg didn't maybe release one or two of them in a few months earlier, a few months later. It's just
it's back then the studios called the shots. It was essentially that. So, what I thought was cool here about the visual effects that same year, Tron, the movie Tron, Disney's Tron was out, and it was disqualified for visual effects because they used computers, and they felt that was cheating, like that was considered cheating.
Oh no,
using
TRS-80 was used, Commodore 64
effects. Yeah, so things might have changed a little bit since then.
Yeah.
So we talked about our Grumpy Awards. I'll just go real quick. So when I first saw this movie, I saw it ad nauseum as an 11-year-old when we first got our HBO subscription, and I probably watched that thing 17 times a week. And then I go back and watch it every year. But when I first saw it, obviously I thought it was great. Watching again with a kind of analytical eye for this movie, I still liked it. It's kind of reminiscent of it was kind of the last wave of the 70s horror genre, and the 80s kind of moved more towards gore and the Jasons and the Freddys and the whatever's
slasher movies,
the Michael Myers things, but this is kind of like the last callback of 70s horror. And then I think horror's even gone a little more nerdball now. I think most horror now is like violence porn, like the Saw movies and things like that, or like the young adult jump scare things. I don't think they're that.
Yeah, I mean, I think some movies like The Conjuring, had their day in the sun, and that's kind of a throwback to scary ghosts kind of movies like this in a way.
Right, Mike, your grumpy meter pre and post.
Oh yeah, I didn't see it in the theater when I was a kid, but obviously I saw it on HBO probably 100 times. But it's still, even though you watch it over and over again, you still have these moments where you're like, oh, this is really creepy, and it still gets to you. And I guess that's the best part of it. And I'm like you, I miss movies like this as opposed to the slasher and the torture porn kind of movies. We've been seeing the last 20 or 30 years. And it's good once in a while to see a movie like like The Others or House on Haunted Hill or something that has like genuine scares in it instead of just cheap gore. And like you say in this movie, nobody died, but for what it was genuinely a scare fest. And I would recommend this for anybody to watch now.
Yeah, I agree. So we talked about how this affected us as kids. All right, so and that kind of got us thinking about our generation. There was a lot out there And we were kind of left on our own, as I mentioned earlier. We were kind of on. We didn't really have the level of supervision, parental supervision, that there is now. I'm not saying that's good or a bad thing. I'm just saying it was just how it was. But we were exposed to a lot of stuff as kids, Mike, and we carry the scars, and I have a lot of baggage from growing up in that era. So we thought for this week's episode of You Just Made the List, Pal. We're going to go back and look at, we're going to try to list out 2 or 3 things that to this day really freaked us out as kids. So Mike, I went first the last couple times. Why don't you go first on this one?
I'm going to go with, well, there's a wide variety. I'm going to go with a category as opposed to a certain incident, and then I'll go to the incident. But
okay,
my category is kids in movies that are scary kids. Obviously, we have Heather O'Rourke and Poltergeist, who, that look into the TV and look back over her shoulder. That's frightening. And then you have kids that are in more modern movies like Let the Right One In. Who
oh yeah.
You think of the little vampire girl in that one. And then you have a scene that I think probably struck me more as a kid than anything. It was a scene from Salem's Lot. And it's the little boy who dies and then becomes a vampire and wants to visit his little brother and taps on his window.
The scratching window.
Yes, it just happens to be his window's on the 2nd floor, so that's kind of suspicious, huh? But the way he's like, Danny, let me in, Danny.
Go.
That scene. The whole movie. We can have a whole another podcast about Salem's Lot and that damn Toby Hooper. But
Toby Hooper at it again.
That scene was just, it sticks with me. And that for me, that's probably close to number 1 as far as, memorable horror scene for me.
All right. Well, that was my number 1, you bastard. So
hey.
luckily I have a alternate here. All
right.
So mine was a little kind of same along the same line, Mike. I don't know if you remember, there's a TV movie called Trilogy of Terror, starring Karen Black. And it was kind of 3 vignettes where she played the main actress in each one. And the last one is really, anybody really remembers, I think it was Amelia was the title of the little vignette. And it was, she gets chased around by the Zuni fetish doll. Mike, do you remember that?
That does sound familiar.
The premise, again, this was 1975. I remember seeing it as a very, very young kid, but it's just that it's a little tiny. She gets introduced to some sort of collector's piece, like a Zuni fetish doll. And it's a little, looks like a little shrunken applehead guy, but it's got like 100 teeth in it, and he's got a little spear. And I just remember that little thing chasing her around the house.
Oh my god!
It's just rumbling. He had this weird kind of dialect and just kind of chewed her up. And so my number 1 thing that scared me was the Zuni fetish doll, Mike. And it's
oh my gosh!
I would encourage everybody to Google all of our choices so you can see what we're talking about. But maybe we'll put a few on the webpage. But
yeah,
that's my number 1.
I thought your number 1 would have been the rock and roll Martian, the cymbal clapping monkey from Merlin.
Jesus, David.
Gee, my God, don't be stupid, David.
My God, David.
All right. My number 2. This is close to the top, but it's from a little 1990 TV movie that was actually it was like a mini movie, when they used to show like movies in 3 parts, but they did every damn Stephen King movie like this. And it was the version of It. And which was, for a TV movie, was genuinely probably one of Stephen King's best TV movies I can think of.
The one with Tim
Salem's
Curry,
Lot.
Right?
Yeah. And Tim Curry It was great, and had Richard Thomas and of course and Tim Curry. But the scariest scene, the scariest scene in the movie. I'm sorry, Tim Reed. And what was the other guy?
Venus Flytrap. Venus Flytrap flame.
That's right, Dennis Christopher. This guy that in the scene I saw, it was just his head, and he was in a refrigerator, and he's the guy they're all coming to for his funeral in this little town in Maine, and they open up a refrigerator, and there's his head. He's laughing at him, and it's the guy who plays him is the boyfriend in one day at a time. But anyway,
Yeah.
that scene where he's just laughing at him and talking to him, and I remember as a kid thinking, what is this on a, and yeah, well, not a kid, but I was in college and still was just so
Yeah.
terrifying.
Yeah.
And, once you see the rest of the movie and you realize they're battling a spider, it's not so scary, but
Yeah.
the build up to it. And when you see this scene and they open the fridge and there's his head, and I'm like, oh my God, this guy
No, that's legit.
just laughing
That's
at him. Yeah, that was, that did me in.
Yeah. I saw that like about a month after I had read the book, and it freaked me out then, and it still freaks me out now. So yeah, it's great call,
Stanley.
Mike. Yeah, great
Oh,
call.
yeah.
Well, my second on the list is not necessarily related to horror, but it horrified me, and it still does to this day. Things that freaked me out as a kid was the Hamburglar, McDonald's Hamburglar,
Oh,
and not the soft Nerf ball version in 1985. I'm talking about the one from the 70s, the one that kind of looks like the Saw villain.
yes. Snaggletooth.
Yeah, again, maybe this merits an Instagram post, Mike, but the Hamburger from the 70s was a scary MF, and I remember just being freaked out every time I saw him. And he had this weird kind of dialect too, the rumble 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 thing, and he was always stealing your hamburgers. That in itself is not
That's
scary,
terrible.
Mike, but
Yeah.
but the visage of him and his little mask and his grotesque features. I mean grotesque in the academic sense, grotesque. Just horrible. So Ray Kroc and Rotten Hell, the Hamburger should never been released on the general public. So that's my number 2 list, Mike.
What are your feelings about Grimace or the Fry Guys?
They're cool.
Okay. Mayor McCheese, okay.
Yeah, he's cool.
All right. Well, this last scene, this is another one that really stuck with me because I saw it when I was like 8 years old, and it was one of those. It was an end of the movie. I had seen the original version in the 50s of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but then I watched the 1978 version, and
I know where you're going. I know where you're
oh
going.
my
Yeah.
word! They end the movie. They get near the climax of the movie. They're our heroes include like Jeff Goldblum of all people, Donald Sutherland, and Veronica Cartwright are all holed up, and they're getting ready to be attacked. I think Leonard Nimoy's in the group too, and they're getting ready to be attacked by all the aliens, and it just cuts to black, and then you're like years later, and it's Veronica Cartwright, and she seems to be okay, and she's walking around Denver, and she comes across one of her friends, Donald Sutherland, who was in that group, and she's like, "Oh, thank God you're okay," and she sits next to him, and he just has this blank look on his face, and he just screams at her in that awful noise that they make, and like, and just points at her. And,
Yeah.
that's how the movie ends. And you realize, all of them are turned to aliens. It's just, that scene alone just it gives you no hope when you see an ending like that. And sorry for
that's a great call.
Sorry for the spoilers,
Yeah.
but I would imagine most people kind of know. Like I said, the 50s version, at least you had some hope. Like there are other people around him, but the sense of isolation that she has once you realize she's the last one left, it's just awful.
And that's kicking the guts there. That's a good one, Mike. Well, I feel like I have to kind of change the tone a little bit and a little bit softer. So I had a couple honorable mentions in here. The Shining twins. It's about any scene in the last 30 minutes of The Shining could be up there. I was affected by the miniseries V. Remember the miniseries V with Mark Singer? Remember the first episode or the first reveal when they kind of pull their skin off and you see the reptile alien underneath them? I always thought that was scary. And I always, and I'll admit it, I'm a man. I always thought that Slim Goodbody was kind of scary. For those not familiar, Slim Goodbody was, imagine Leo Sayer with his skin peeled off.
Leo Sayer
was it Captain Kangaroo, right, Mike?
Yeah.
But he was there to kind of help kids learn how the body works. But he had he had a unitard on that had all his inner organs on the outside. He always kind of freaked me out. But mine is I'll try to keep it around to film. A scene that always really upset me as a kid was there's a scene in Willy Wonka. It's like kind of the second phase after Augustus Gloop gets sucked into the chocolate river, and they get on the
psychedelic ride from hell. Yes.
Yeah. And there's a scene in there where a chicken gets its head cut off. That whole scene, I could never understand what they were hoping to achieve there.
Right.
But that has damaged my psyche to this day. All the imagery that's shown in that tunnel, and just the weird turn, the tone that shifts when Willy Wonka he's screaming, like spit is flying out of his mouth, and he's doing this catastrophic, apocalyptic speech.
Yeah.
It's a kids movie about candy, you jerks. What are you putting this in here for? But that scene where the chicken gets beheaded, I put that up there as one of my disturbing children things of all time. So
the whole movie too. I mean, just kids are being picked off one by one, and it's like, well, hopefully that one's still alive. You maybe have a chance if you can go down there and save her.
Yeah, it's kind of like a morality. It's like it's a fable or a morality tale about don't eat too much, don't chew gum, don't be rude, all that kind of thing. But wow, they really take it on those kids. Again,
jeez,
never would fly today, Mike.
Oh, I'm scratching my whole list. I'm putting number one. Oh my Lord.
All right, well, I'm too scared to continue, so I think we're going to wrap it up here, Mike. Just remember, everybody, that if you have any questions about the show or interested in what's coming up next, you can always check out our social media page. That's at Grumpy Nostalgia on Instagram. And if you ever feel compelled to send us an email questioning our observations or insightful comments, you can send us an email at nostalgiagrumps@gmail.com. So, Mike, happy Halloween. That's going to wrap it up for us. Anything else before we leave?
Next time, do you mind holding back? You're jamming my frequencies.
Jamming my frequencies. You stole my damn line again. All right, so for Mike James, this is Justin, and we will see you again next time. Happy Halloween, everybody.
They linger in a perpetual dream state, a nightmare from which they cannot wake.